something on my mind. I bet you know what I'm thinking about. You know I can't stop loving you. Every time when you're looking at me, it feels like my heart is skipping a beat, yeah. You know I can't live without you. You make me crazy in a good way. So come on, baby, let's talk. Let's talk about love, like you and me all night. And let's talk about love and feeling alright. And let's talk about love. Yeah, baby, come and dance with me. You're everything I'll ever need. So let's talk about love. Can I take you out tonight? Kiss you in the moonlight. There is no place I'd rather be. Come on, girl, we can take my car, drinking some beers in your favorite bar, yeah. You know I can't live without you. You make me crazy in that good way. So come on, baby, let's talk. Let's talk about love, like you and me all night. And let's talk about love, I'm feeling alright. And let's talk about love. Yeah, baby, come and dance with me. You're everything I'll ever need. So let's talk about love. Let's talk about love. Let's talk about love. Let's talk about love. Let's talk about love.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode number 6 of the Marriage Makeover. And tonight is no different. We're just going to jump in. We're just going to talk about love, you know. And as you all know, I take it to another place every single time. I take it beyond the walls of the church. For those of you who are okay with that, thank you for joining me tonight again. And my name is Dr. Sharon Arundel, and I work with couples all the time and women, but especially couples. And my mantra is trying to take everybody from being roommates to romance again. And so tonight is no different. And I have 2 couples joining me tonight. Our topic is bonding as interracial soulmates. Dr. Sharon, what does that mean? Well, I can't really tell you because I'm not one of those couples, but I have 2 couples that are here, ready, waiting to tell you what it's like to bond as interracial soulmates, but not just being different cultures, because there's one thing they have in common. There's a common thread, and that common thread is God. And so tonight, I want you to join me as I introduce my first couple, Dr. Lou and Pastor Michelle DeCaro. These are people that I've known. I haven't seen these people in many years, but some things never change. Over their 25 years of marriage, Dr. Lou and Pastor Michelle have labored together in all facets of life and ministry. In the earlier phase of their marriage, Pastor Michelle greatly supported her husband, Dr. Lou, in his role as a senior pastor of 2 congregations in New Jersey and in New York City. However, the Lord switched their seats in ministry after Pastor Michelle founded the People's Church in 2020, where Dr. Lou is the supporting elder. Dr. Lou and Pastor Michelle are the grateful parents of a 19-year-old budding mathematician who likes math, not me, Louis Michael, who is currently enrolled in one of the great HBCUs, of this nation. The DeCaros are an interracial couple, and here they are. They're an interracial couple, and with no apologies, um, with no apology or regret, and they're happy to remind people of two things. Listen, guys, two things. First, what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. And second, a good marriage, no matter what the melanin content, needs the Lord and a lot of laughter. Welcome to the Marriage Makeover, Dr. Lou and Pastor Michelle. And so I don't want to leave out my other couple. Edgar and Deborah Torres have been married for 15 years. They met each other while serving at Bethel Gospel Assembly in New York City, our old stomping ground, and began a friendship that grew. In 2009, God began to open their eyes and their hearts towards each other, which eventually led to them being married in 2010. Since joining in marriage, they have ministered as a couple through Way of the Cross by hosting workshops, classes, and creating devotionals. They count it a privilege to serve as a pastor and elder at Grace Place Church in Bergen County, New Jersey, since 2005. God, through them, I just wanted to bring them on so you could see what they look like. God, through them, through their union, has allowed them the opportunity to minister to youth, young adults, as well as couples contemplating marriage. Their lifelong motto as a couple is, there is no hookup like a God hookup. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Marriage Makeover. Thank you for joining us tonight. And as you know, we're going to have people trickling in here just to watch and to listen, whether they listen tonight, tomorrow night, next week, whenever. We want to keep it real all the time. So let's just jump into, how y'all doing? All okay?
We good.
We're good.
Goody. We good.
I can't wait to hear your responses to my questions. I'm excited to hear what you have to say and what you have to tell other people. I know, even in this day and age, there's still stigma about this, even in the church. So let's keep it real tonight, with my first question being, how did you meet? What made your spouse appealing to you as God's choice for a partner? And I'm not going to tell anybody who should begin. I'm going to let you guys decide who wants to begin.
You want to start?
Don't all speak at once.
Wives first.
All right.
Wives first.
Go for it. Who wants to go first, or do I have to choose? I'm gonna choose.
I'll go.
Thank you.
I'll go. Like we said in our bio, we knew each other for about 10 years before we started having feelings for each other. And I think it threw us off because we were friends all the time. You know what I mean? But it was just something about him that started feeling normal to look at him in a different way. It's something that I don't tell many people, but I was.
Tell it.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, tell it.
I don't tell a lot of people this, but one day I was literally, and this is before I even was thinking about him as a mate or anything. I was just walking. I was laying in bed and I fell asleep, and I literally saw myself kissing him.
Whoa.
Wait. Ooh, hey.
That was the weirdest thing to me because I was like, why is this happening? This is not right. You know what I mean? And so I really brushed it off, but it was like it was increasing, not the zoom zoom zoom, but just the thought of us actually being a couple started increasing. And so what did I do? I ran to my pastors. And I said, what's happening here? What's going on? Because we knew each other for so long. And it was a little strange, you know what I mean? Because we both didn't have any thought of one another in that way. I mean, it's a long story, but just put it that way. So we realized something was happening. And the thing about my husband is like he's very attractive, yes. But he's an amazing teacher of the word. And that really, like, whenever he would get up and he would just share the word, it would just draw me in. I would just see the handsome, beautiful man that loved God. I know it sounds churchy, but that's what drew me. And after that came everything else. That was me. Yeah. But so that's what appealed to me, his love for God and his love for the word. And so but the kiss thing kind of threw me off. And I'm like, the blood of Jesus. I'm used to thoughts, you know. And here it is 15 years later, you know. But
She's not rebuking anymore. That's what I'm
That's right. That's right. Thank God she's not rebuking that anymore.
The Lord really had to get my attention to say, this is something that I want for you. And it wasn't something that I wanted for myself, like me and him, but it was something that God wanted. That's why we always say it was definitely a God hookup, because we had no inkling for each other.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Edgar. You're on.
I'm on. I'll take it.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, like she said, 10 years ago, we started at Bethel Gospel Assembly. You know, we had opportunities to minister and together in the youth ministry. And then we had friends as well from Bethel that we all kind of hung up together. So that's how we got to know each other. But it wasn't until we started going to Grace Place Church, and we ended up, a lot of people from New York ended up going to help start this church in Hackensack. And then eventually people started moving either to Jersey or just moving out to different states, doing other ministries and different things. And long story short, we ended up being one of the few people who was still in New York going to this church. And so my story has always been, it all started at IHOP. Because we were both taking the bus, and I just happened to be taking the bus one day, and she was at IHOP because her friend, who used to go to the church but ended up moving to Atlanta, they used to go to IHOP. So she just happened to say, hey, I'm at IHOP. Are you on your way there? And I just happened to be on my way. And I said, sure. I said, yeah, I'm on my way. So you want to just have breakfast. Just have breakfast. I didn't think anything of it. Wasn't thinking anything of it. And I just said, sure, why not? We went, we had breakfast, and it was such a great time. I had such a great time. And just, again, because we were in New York, we were taking the bus. So we just started taking the bus more together. And just the more that we spent time together, the more I started to notice her more. And I started to see more of just a friend. It was really her. It was, first of all, she's a wonderful woman. She's a strong woman. She's always been an independent woman. But at the same time, I got to see the side of her that was humble, sweet, just loving God, loving people. And it was those sides of her that I got to see more and more, see her more as a friend, and then turning from a friend to possibly be even more of a friend, to really looking at her as more than a friend, to finally just saying, you know what? Something
This is
got
more than a friend.
yeah, my heart is changing. I'm getting the flutters. I'm getting the I'm getting the feels. I'm getting happy now because I'm just loving them up because I'm just like, okay, there's so much more. So my heart grew and eventually we took it to the next step.
All right.
Wow.
Well, thank you guys for sharing that. For
Ooh.
those of you listening who just jumped on, we're talking to interracial couples about bonding. And so, Pastor Lou, Dr. Lou, Pastor Michelle, you're on.
Oh, go first.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I, first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Sharon, for having us. And just to see ministers and Pastor Torres is just a blessing. But my story might be a little different because I was not even thinking about any kind of interracial, nothing. I thought that I was going to be a worship leader and move to West Africa, and I thought that that was going to be my lot, and that's actually what I wanted. And I would see Dr. Lou at Bethel, say hello, and that was it. And when you go on so many mission trips, it's like you're going on the mission trips as a single person, and now he's bishop, but all the pastors, they want to fix you up. All right, this person might be good for you. I was like, well, whoever's coming for me, they just gonna have to be right in my face because I'm not going nowhere. I'm
Yeah.
not doing anything. They're gonna have to take me on the plane to, for a marriage. And for me, I began to look at my life. I think I was 34, and I started looking at people, like looking all lovey-dovey. And I was like, okay, God, like, I think I'm ready. I think that I want to be married and have children. And it just didn't seem like it was working out. And I know that it was a God thing because I was so immersed in ministry that I wasn't even thinking about a relationship because I was so immersed in ministry and I loved ministry. And I actually lived in this building where we live now. I had a 1-bedroom and I was living my life like it's golden. I was happy.
Mhm.
But there was a little part of me that was like, ooh, time is moving. And then I think you asked me to minister with you when you were preaching. He was preaching at this church, and I asked my friend to go with me. And it was so funny because she was like, what about him? I was like, what about him? He's white. I mean, I'm just, that's just not where I'm going. and I ministered and we shook hands, and he paid me my money, for ministry. And that was it. And then I don't know, maybe 4 years later, I think
4 years. Yeah.
4 years, he called me through Sister Viola, may she rest in peace, to minister at his church. And this is the serendipitousness of it. My mama, my sister-in-law, my brother, and his then best friend, he's going on to be with the Lord now, Hector Moreno, right? They were all there. And we are in the car like, I need stockings. I didn't do this. And he is in the room ironing and hearing the parsons hearing the whole thing. I mean, we screaming, like the black people, in the earth. And we're like, well, I got to run in my stockings. And my mother's like, and we get there and I minister. And he says to me something like, do you know about New Jersey? And I was like, no. And then that was it. And then, now I could be wrong, boo. I don't know. You could correct me, But we were leaving on a missions trip to Barbados or something with Bethel. And he called me, and it was at 10 o'clock at night. And one thing that Bishop Carlton Brown used to always say, if a man calls you at 10 o'clock at night, they're not calling for Bible study and they're not calling for prayer. That always stuck with me when anybody would call. And he called and he said, oh, maybe we could go out and I was leaving, I think the day before, and we met for dinner. And when I saw him in another lens, I was like, "Ah, like, I don't even know what's going on here." But when we sat in that Chinese restaurant, I felt like I knew him forever, forever, ever. I felt like I knew him. And then I think you said, "Are you wearing contacts?" We were both wearing contacts. And we sat in that restaurant for, about 4 hours. But prior to that, I was supposed to go out to dinner with Pastor Carl Phipps and Pamela, not Pam Johnson, but the other Pam. She's going on to Pam Wilkins. And when he asked me again if I wanted to go out, I was like, "Oh, okay." And I called them. I was like, I'm canceling our time because I'm going out. They were like, "Well, who?" I'm like, "With Brother Lou." They're like, "Oh my goodness, what's going on?" And that was it. And that was it.
All right. I can't wait to hear Dr. Lou's version of this.
Yeah. Well, the corresponding puzzle piece. I think for me, getting married was something of a project because when I say that, I waited longer to get married, longer than I wanted to. But what I came to realize is that when the time came for me to be married, I was actually ready. I think that sometimes men, and I don't want to paint a broad brush on men, but I think a lot of men in our culture are not as mature and ready. But I could certainly say for myself, when I thought it was time for me to get married, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready financially. I was a doctoral student for a long time. I was a graduate student forever. And I got married later than I imagined, but I think that it's better to do things according to God's timing because you can meet very fine people but still not be suited or called. And I think we who understand as Christians that all things work together for good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose, that sometimes what God is doing involves more than just our lives, but a complex of different lives coming together. God is doing a lot of things at once. And in my case, I wasn't supposed to get married, and it frustrated me to the point where, and I became a pastor as a single man, which I did not relish. So again, we have a common thread here. All of us have a common thread of having been at Bethel Gospel Assembly.
Mhm.
And in the 90s, I went off. I was ordained by Archbishop Wilbert McKinley in Brooklyn. And then I ended up I won't get into that because it's not part of the story, but providentially ended up pastoring a church next door to the apartment where I lived in Jersey City, became the pastor there, and was disconnected from Bethel. And so what Michelle is sharing, that when I first asked her to sing when I preached, that was in a transition time. I wasn't really looking at her. I actually, was looking elsewhere, which of course, again, the Lord closed that door in, at that period of my life. She wasn't interested in me, but I really did want, and I knew that she sang. And so I asked her to come and sing. And I think I got a stipend of $100. It was a small church in the Bronx. And I gave her $50. She sang, and then she said 4 years later, I was now situated in this congregation in Jersey City, and I had tried. It was a congregation with a lot of needs, one of which was music and worship. I one time had invited Bethel's ensemble to come, and then the following year I wanted to get some special, so she came to mind, and I promise you that there was no agenda because I didn't remember or think of her that way, and so I invited her, as she said, through a dear departed Sister Viola Julian, and she came with her family, as she talked about, and she ministered. And in the fellowship hall below, after the service, when all was said and done, there was no exchanges or nothing, no flirting. when she came and said goodbye, and I thanked her, and we embraced, and this is truth. I heard and felt a bell go off in my chest. And I think God did that for me because I'm such a slow learner. And because I was also getting older, and I think had come to the point where I was questioning whether, in fact, I did have a cross cultural call in marriage. Because I had always had that for years, but I just couldn't seem to find certainty or clarity. And again, I realized that I didn't even have resources. I wasn't ready to be a husband because I couldn't provide. There was just so many things that made me feel inadequate. And even as the pastor of a little church with a very meager salary, I was very hesitant. So when the bell went off, something immediately changed in me. Never happened to me before. And like my wife shares, that when we got together, I wasn't nervous. We sat down, and it was like sitting down with somebody I'd known forever, and it was just a different experience, and it just caused me to realize that marriage is a calling, and in Christ, especially when people are called to the work of the kingdom, God is doing more than just matching people up. God is bringing together. He's always a good steward of his resources and his servants, and he's bringing together those who would serve him in a way. And when it's all said and done, we understand that God does know best. I always look at the story, and then I'll shut up, but I always look at the story of Isaac, who was 40 years old before he got his wife. And, there may have been cultural reasons for that. It may be that he had to wait for a kinsman to mature, and maybe that was Rebecca, but he had to wait. And I think sometimes some of us don't want to wait. And I would just say, for those who are waiting, don't despise the waiting. Trust God's timing. And also, I would say, be open to whatever the king, because we don't marry according to world's values. Because as we know, there are Black people that don't like to see us together. And there are, of course, the norm of a lot of white racism that has defined our society looks at negatively. So sorry.
Okay. Opening out.
Okay, sorry. But at any rate, when we get married as servants of God, God's hand is in it. And so I'm grateful that after almost 25 years that I look back with a greater appreciation for what God has done.
All right. Well, I knew you were going to give us a teaching.
Thank you.
I knew that. So I was bracing myself for that.
I'll try not to do that anymore.
Okay, well, that's what we do. That's what we do. We teach. And a lot of people on here probably need to be taught, and including even us here all together. So thank you for that teaching word and that, about how you guys got together. I'm gonna move it along and ask this question. What are some challenges, if any, that you have faced due to your different backgrounds, and how did you navigate the challenges? So we'll start with Michelle.
Well, in the beginning of our marriage, because I am very, I would say very Black, foundational Black oriented, I found myself having to prove that he was who he was, and that I really did love myself. Because people would say, well, if you marry outside of your race, that means you don't love yourself as a Black person. And so I was constantly feeling like I had to prove No, he writes books on Malcolm X, and he writes books on John Brown, and then I began to say, well, if you really knew me, you would know that I would not marry someone who did not understand the assignment and did not have an affection and an understanding about Black history, about racism, about slavery. And it took me maybe about 2 years. And I just asked the Lord to just help me not to, I wasn't ashamed of my marriage, but I felt like I had to prove that this marriage was solidified. And it wasn't even from my family. My mom, even the day that I sang at the church, my mother turned to one of the women and she said, "Is he married?" Because she said, "Oh, he's tapping his feet." And then she said, "I saw a little baby." I said, "Ma, I'm not even, I'm here to do ministry." But as we began to grow into this marriage, I was like, I don't owe anyone anything. As a matter of fact, they can learn, they can learn from us. And so that was a challenge for me. Um, and I think there was like one person in our family at the wedding. He was texting everybody, "Don't go to the wedding. This is not right. She shouldn't marry this white man." And then after they became like so close, after he got a chance to talk to Lou and see the kind of person that he is. But so that was a challenge for me because of the way that I was, with the way that I was raised. My mother is very, Afrocentric, but yet she had a plethora of friends who looked like Lou. So, and then also for me going to a high school, the High School of Music and Art, where it was just a plethora of just different people. So that also helped me to be open. So didn't have challenges, but I looked at the way other people looked at me.
Mm-hmm. All
But
right.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. I don't know who is listening, right? But I know there are some single people listening, and you need to get it. You need to get it. It's 2025. We're in the 21st.
Mhm. She'll come back.
Mhm.
Hmm. Right, guys? She'll come back.
Yes, she will.
How you doing? You're good?
You are good.
Oh, yes, yes.
I sorry about that,
Okay.
technical difficulties, but like I was saying, I'm hoping that tonight will start to change some of our thought
Mm,
frame, especially in the church realm.
yes.
Because we're not supposed to be thinking the way the world is thinking, but
Mm,
yet we are. Yet
yes,
we are. And we
yes.
could say we don't, but we are. And
Mm,
so I'm hoping that tonight will change. And it's not even black and white. I think, Edgar, you're Hispanic, correct?
mm,
So it doesn't matter the different cultures. I mean, I am Jamaican, you know, and my husband is from Trinidad. And people won't look at that as a culture thing, but it is. It
mm,
is. It
mm,
all is, you know.
mm.
And the one thing that we need to have in common as believers is that we are believers,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know, and that should be the common thread all the time, you know.
yes.
And so thank you for responding to that. Dr. Lou, any thoughts, any teaching?
And um, I mean, autobiographically, I don't think quote unquote race has ever been a problem. I mean, again, I always say I had the Marco Polo gene. Like there was something even from when I was a child. I always liked the culture and culture crossing, and so and I had a great interest for years in the different African American and the African diaspora issues. So that wasn't an issue. I think for us, I don't know if the dynamics of, again, as you're saying, Dr. Sharon, it's really cultural differences. And sometimes they're microcultural differences. Because it'd be, for instance, as an urban woman, an urban black woman, and a guy like me who was brought up for many years in Western Pennsylvania, small towns, then came to the city. So sometimes she'll still say to me, you're really not New York. And I've been in New York now longer than I've lived anywhere else. But I recognize sometimes those kind of cultural issues and how, maybe urban women, particularly Black urban women, and maybe, uh, again, Black American urban women see relationships, how they've experienced them, how they respond to men. Sometimes is a challenge for European American guys. I'm from an Italian Pentecostal background. And in the Italian Pentecostal background, the men were maybe not as machismo as they are in the world, but they were machismo. And women were expected to follow a certain way. And you're not going to get that with a Black woman. I think in general, Black women have a certain vitality and a certain, presence that may not be found in other cultures, but still so the idea of race, I think you're right. Race should not be a definitive factor, because if I would have married a woman from India or Asia, there would still be ethnic and historical differences that I would have to learn. So that's never been an issue. I think, again, at the end of the day, the heavy lifting is marriage. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just marriage, a man and a woman. And I always say men and women are really the two races.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because
That's right.
the sisters, all the sisters of the planet, you're women. You're you have certain values and inclinations, and all of the men, whatever our melanin content is, we're men, and therein lies the work,
The issues.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
But I do think, just one other thing, if I may say, I would say to white guys, I wouldn't say, let's say to Brother Edgar, who's New York and Latino, and I can't speak to that experience. But I do think that if white guys are thinking about being involved in so-called interracial marriages, intercultural marriages, that it's important that they get off the cultural high horse that we've many times inherited and learn about other cultures, humble yourself, get educated, and understand and learn about the history and experience of people. Because when you marry a woman, and this could also be true of a I would say a so-called white woman marrying a Black man, you got to learn about, you don't assume that they're going to follow and fall in line with your cultural norms.
Right.
So humble yourself, shut up, listen, read, and then you maybe be ready to enter into a union with a woman, because whether we like it or not, these racial dynamics were defined for us before we were ever on the scene, and we need to understand them. So
thank you. More teaching, everyone. More teaching, more teaching. Welcome to class. Welcome to class.
Yes.
We're in class tonight. The man has taught all over the world, all over the place. I expected to be taught tonight. So thank you. Thank you again. And so, Edgard, you're on.
All right. Well, first of all, I had the privilege. First of all, I think my mother actually paved the way, because my stepfather, after she got divorced from my father, my stepfather was actually African American, and I was around him since the age of like 9. So I mean, so she kind of like opened up. I think she was kind of like the frontier person for our very Hispanic family, And out, of course, I had the opportunity to go to the Bethel Gospel Assembly, which is a long story in and of itself. How this kid from the Bronx ended up in Harlem. That's a long story, but I did, and having that experience as well, and my family seeing my interactions at Bethel and seeing how positive it was as well, I think helped open the door as well to being real receptive. We always joke, because I said the only people I actually had any concern in my family, I knew my mother was going to be fine. I knew my sister was going to be fine. The only concern I had was my grandparents, because I said they're a little bit more old fashioned, and I've heard them make comments here before about different people. So I was like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen when she gets there. She goes sees my grandmother, and lo and behold, the minute Debbie went there and visited my grandmother the first time, fell in love right away.
Wow.
And I was like, and I was shocked. I think she was shocked too.
We were,
we were both shocked.
it
like,
was such a weird. It was such an interesting experience because I had just went natural. So here it is, me and my natural hair. I'm going to see this old-fashioned lady, you know. And when we got there, we laughed. We had a good time. You know, she was being herself. She was all good. She was good that day. She was a good.
She was big.
After that, I was like, I am who I am. But yeah, she. You know, I would say that his family definitely embraced me. And I was, you know, I was very nervous about that. I was very nervous. I didn't know what was going to happen. But that day was a real blessing.
And I want to say that for me, well, it's on my side when I got to see her family, it was a dynamic change, but it wasn't even just in terms of, I guess, culture as in African American versus Hispanic. Her family, my family, even though it's large, we're separated. So I only know literally my sisters, my mother, my immediate family. Whereas she was able to connect regularly with. First of all, she has 4 sisters, and they have nieces and nephews, and then on top of that, cousins galore. When I say galore, I still don't know all their names. Just for the record. Sorry, y'all, I love y'all, but you know I'm still learning. but you know, so it's a large family, and I remember going the first time to their Christmas and seeing them all together, opening presents, having dinner, and I'm just like floored the whole way through. Like I've never seen this in my entire life. I loved it.
Wow.
And I think what I would say to couples who are really just looking into having an interracial relationship, I would say be open to learn, be willing to learn, be open and accepting, be ready for the new, and look for it and encourage it. And I think that's what helped me, and that's what helped even our families. Because I appreciate the one thing about her family is I never once from anybody, and some of them I tried to test me and trick me to just see if I was real. I would stick around and all that stuff, which is normal. But they all always ended up showing love, and accept this no matter what. And I think it was because we both had the place of saying we want to learn about each other and about our families.
Right. Okay. We're running out of our time and space for tonight. But I did, and Edgar kind of started the ball rolling with this question. It's gonna be my final question because I want you guys to really answer it from a place of depth. Speak to a couple contemplating dating or marrying someone from another culture. Tell them how to prepare and why it is important to prepare. Let's see. Let's start with the teacher. Dr. Lou.
Well, I've eaten up a lot of time, so I'll try to be succinct to say, again, depending on the culture of the dynamic, learn as much as you can about your prospective spouse's cultural background. Respect that. Learn about it. And again, I think also strive to be as good a spouse and prepare as a spouse, because and I'm talking especially for Christians, in the end, what makes us stand or fall as Christian spouses is following the lordship of Christ, following the Lord, and recognizing that we as men, for instance, we acquire lots of bad ways of thinking from the culture. And so the issue of ethnicity or race is one aspect we have to sort out and clarify, and be prepared for criticism. You know, some of us get it worse than others who
Mhm.
are involved in this, and it may come from your family or it may come from strangers, but it comes, and when it comes, you just have to be prepared and steeled in yourself to know again that that's the world's way of thinking, and no matter what people say. And again, I respect Black people having a particular burden. You know, remember Frederick Douglass? His second wife was a white woman, and he caught hell for it. Um,
Mhm.
so prejudice, you know, we can talk about the nature of racism, but I think prejudice is a human sin, and so it doesn't really matter what side of the so-called fence you're on. Somebody's not going to like you for making that choice. So be prepared for that, and know, as we shared, what God has brought together. Let no one tear asunder.
All right.
God bless you if you are thinking along these lines.
Yeah, yeah. God bless you for those of you who are here. And even if you're not thinking along those lines, because sometimes, like you all have said, you weren't thinking along those lines, but God had a plan. And sometimes we try to jump over his plan because it doesn't work with ours. And I'm hoping that those who are listening will stick to the plan of God over the plan of you, of over
Yeah.
your plan,
Mhm.
and let it, you know, I can sit here and say many are the mistakes that I've made, you know, in jumping over God's plan. Thank God for mercy, you know, and grace and all the things. There's been a lot of divorce situations that have happened. Thank God you guys have not had to face that. But, you know, it happens. It happens. It's happening so much within the walls of the church, you know, but we tend to ignore. We tend to ignore it. But it's happening, and it's not, it has nothing to do with culture.
Yeah.
Even if it does have to do with culture, it's just being unequally yoked, even though you're both even though you both say you're Christians, you're
Mhm.
unequally yoked because you did not stick to the plan of God. And so I'm hoping tonight and every time we come on here, you know, I always have my bullhorn, you know, ready to spout out because I know a lot of my topics are controversial within the walls of the church, but I'm here tonight to say that I really don't care about that. What I care about is what does God think? What does God think about all of it? And so I'm gonna I'm gonna utilize the men first. So I'm gonna ask Edgard to answer next, and then I'm gonna ask the woman to chime in after. So Edgard, you kind of started it already, so you could
Yeah,
just yeah.
yeah. I'll just add on to it. Yeah, so like I said before, I mean, it's really being open, being willing, being curious, being wanting to learn. I think about, scripture says, your husbands loves your wives, and I think if you love somebody else, even despite the differences, you're gonna look beyond the differences, and you're gonna want to learn how to appreciate those differences, because when you appreciate those differences, you're appreciating them and you're
Mhm.
showing them love. And I think that's the most important thing. And even with everyone else's culture, it's uh, really looking at the glory in the difference, looking at the value, the uniqueness, and just being able to celebrate that, and just dive into that and become part of that. I think that's the beauty of um, even being part of being with someone of a different race is just being able to celebrate the difference and enjoy it.
All right. I like that answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Celebrate the difference and enjoy it. Enjoy it. And regardless of what everybody else is thinking, we think so much about what people think. I wonder what would happen if we thought as much about what God thought
Hmm.
as opposed to what people think, how life would be different for a lot of us. So I'm jumping back to my songbird, um, Pastor Michelle.
Wow, Wow, just the answers. I can say that for me, and I think for anyone who is contemplating, that you really need to go to the Lord. Like you have to pray.
Yeah.
And I remember when we went out the first night, and I just felt in my spirit like I think like this is it. And I'm afraid of that because I'm just afraid, you know? And I just remember going before the Lord and I said, Lord, if this is not you, just remove him. Just remove him. And it's interesting, the things that you think that you want and what God has for you is always what God has for you is what you want, but you don't realize it until you
Yeah.
have it.
Mhm.
So many, if I could tell you how many people go in my inbox and they say, you've been married for 24, 25 years. And he's, so how did you do it? What happened? I said, I just went before the Lord and the Lord knew what I needed. Not so much what I wanted, he knew what I needed. And then what I needed became everything. And I always say that you should like the person. And I tell Lou all the time, like if we weren't married, like I would still want to be your friend because I like you. Like you're nice and you're funny and like you make me laugh. So even
Oh,
if,
gee.
well, but like the person, and I can honestly say I didn't do any kind of research. I just said, Lord, if he's the one, then let him be the one. Because I'm not gonna, because I said to the Lord, I don't want, I know this might sound crazy, but see, I was in the world before I got saved. Okay, I'm gonna keep it. So I said to the Lord, when I am here and I've given my life to you, I do not want to be mad. I don't want to kiss anybody unless they are the husband. And that's exactly how it was, wasn't it? And
Yes, dear.
so I'm saying that I really prayed.
Yeah.
And I know that the Lord answered my prayers and told me just follow my lead. Don't worry about anything. Just follow my lead. And that's what I did. And we just said, wasn't it yesterday? We were talking about like how much we love each other. And then you said that our love is like it. What'd you say? You said it's like a car with no bumps.
Oh no,
Oh,
how we got together.
yeah,
It was like getting in a car going down Columbus Avenue with all green lights
all
as
green
far
light.
as you could see.
No,
That was what it was like when and it's not to say you don't have problems. You're always going to have problems, but the kind of crisis of shall we say failure
mhm.
has not been an issue, and I think that's a grace of God because all marriages experience stress and strain, and there are difficulties, and sometimes you can't do anything about it. Sometimes it's forced on you, but certainly race, so called, is something that the Lord is not hindered by those things. When has the Lord ever said, I'm going to restrict people according to their melanin content?
Mm,
He doesn't do it in the Bible.
mm.
Moses had a black wife. He was a Semite. So he probably looked more like our brother here, and his wife looked like our sister here.
There you go. There's the
You know,
Bible right there.
and Moses' sister tried to use color against her, and you know what happened to her? She got
Well,
traded off. So, um, it's all the kingdom that matters.
Amen.
Yep. More teaching, more teaching, more
well,
teaching, more teaching. I love it. I love teaching. Um, Miss Debbie, you have any closing words for somebody?
I will say this. A good friend of mine, Angela, I had went out to visit her and I told her that we were seeing one another. And she said to me, when you are marrying into another culture, you're marrying the culture. And what she meant by that is you're embracing them. you're engrafting yourself in them. And so in some ways you, even though you're Black, I have some Spanish, if you will. But what I took it as, know what you're doing.
Mhm.
Don't just jump into something, but know that it's God who's sending you and
Mhm.
He's putting you together. And what we did was we just engrafted each other into each other's life. Family activities and, birthdays and, things like that. Dinner on Sundays with his family, birthdays with my family. So we just kind of engrafted each other because we wanted to see how we were with each other's families. Um, and that was, I was raised in Spanish Harlem, and my best friend was Puerto Rican. so so it wasn't like I didn't know the culture or anything. And of course I had, some concerns. I was 40 when we got married. So I was more mature, on my own, independent. So there were some factors there. And those are the things that I had to think about. And that's what I struggle with. Like, oh, you're more mature, this, that, and the other. He's home taking care of his mom. Is that going to be an issue when he leaves? Like, it was things like that, you know what I mean? Because in Black family, you go and do what you got to do. But in the Spanish family, they take care of their own, you know what I mean? And so that was things that I had concern about. But his mom was such a sweetheart. And when I say his mom was such a sweetheart, she didn't get in our way. She taught him everything he needed so that when he got there, he knew it all.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Nice.
All
She
right.
didn't come him back in any way or form. And so what I would say to couples that are interested in one another, yes, pray. That's the first and foremost. Pray. And when you get your green light, then engraft yourself in each other's life. Right?
Right. Mhm. All right, everyone. And so you have heard from these couples tonight. I'm so grateful for you all coming on and talking about this issue that we tend not to talk about. Um, we talk about it as if we're talking about people, but tonight we got a little intimate with it and we actually spoke to the people about it. And I'm just so grateful for you all coming and just being honest, keeping it real and authentic. For my audience tonight, who were very attentive on tonight, just jumping in with some of their little comments as well. And so I look forward to another time with you all. But for tonight, my name is Dr. Sharon Arundel, and this is the Marriage Makeover. And thank you for all of you who join me every first and third Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us for episode number 7 on April 7th at 7:30 p.m. And the topic will be getting married at 60 and beyond. And so I look forward to you all joining me. And I say to my couples tonight and to all of you, have a wonderful and a blessed evening. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye bye, everyone.
Amen.
Goodbye.
Amen.